Is Boston about to turn Golden State's dysfunction into their own championship insurance policy? Let me tell you something. There's a particular kind of electricity that crackles through the NBA when a young, explosive talent starts showing up on injury reports for reasons that smell more like discontent than actual physical ailment. And right now, that electricity is swirling around Jonathan Kuminga like a storm cloud ready to burst over the Bay Area. The question isn't whether Kuminga wants out of Golden State anymore. The question is, should the Boston Celtics be the ones throwing him a lifeline? This isn't just your run-of-the-mill trade speculation. Folks, this is a full-blown organizational standoff playing out in real time, and the Celtics, sitting pretty atop the Eastern Conference, but suddenly vulnerable with Jason Tatum nursing that Achilles injury, find themselves in a fascinating position. They've got assets, they've got need, and most importantly, they've got an opportunity to capitalize on another franchise's inability to manage talent. The Golden State soap opera. How did we get here? Let's rewind the tape and understand exactly what's happening in San Francisco, because this situation didn't develop overnight. Jonathan Kuminga, the 7th overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft, arrived in Golden State with all the physical tools you could dream of: a 6 feet 7 inches frame with legitimate two-way potential, explosive athleticism that makes highlight reels look effortless, and the kind of raw talent that keeps general managers awake at night imagining what could be. But here's where the Warriors' championship or bust mentality collided headfirst with player development. Steve Kerr, a coach who's won 4 championships by trusting veterans and playing a specific brand of motion-heavy basketball, has consistently kept Kuminga on a shorter leash than the young forward believes he deserves. We're talking about a 22-year-old who's averaging career highs in scoring and efficiency, yet still finds himself yanked from games during crucial stretches or relegated to inconsistent minutes that make building rhythm nearly impossible. According to Yahoo Sports' Kevin O'Connor, one of the most plugged-in voices in NBA media, Kuminga's recent injury designations are raising eyebrows around the league. When a healthy young player starts appearing on injury reports during what looks suspiciously like a contract standoff, you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to connect the dots. This is a player who's made it abundantly clear he wants a bigger role, a longer leash, and quite possibly a new zip code. The Warriors face a brutal reality. They're trying to squeeze the last drops of championship contention from the Stephen Curry era while simultaneously developing young talent. It's like trying to renovate your house while still living in it. Messy, frustrating, and rarely successful. Kuminga represents the future, but Golden State is desperately clinging to the present. That fundamental tension has created a situation ripe for exploitation. What Kuminga brings to the table, the good, the bad, and the explosive. Let's talk about what Boston would actually be getting if they pulled the trigger on a Kuminga deal, because this isn't a simple plug-and-play situation. Kuminga is averaging 16.8 points per game this season on 45% shooting, with flashes of brilliance that remind you why scouts fell in love with him in the first place. His ability to attack closeouts, finish through contact, and defend multiple positions makes him exactly the kind of versatile wing that modern championship teams are built around. But, and this is a significant but, Kuminga remains frustratingly inconsistent. His three-point shooting hovers around 32%, which is functional but not elite. His decision-making can be erratic, leading to possessions where he forces contested shots instead of making the extra pass. And perhaps most concerning for a potential Celtics fit, he's still learning how to impact winning when the ball isn't in his hands. Here's where it gets interesting for Boston, though. The Celtics don't need Kuminga to be a primary creator. They need him to be what he's best at, an athletic, switchable wing who can attack mismatches, finish in transition, and provide defensive versatility. With Jason Tatum sidelined and the Eastern Conference looking more competitive than it has in years, Kuminga could provide exactly the kind of insurance policy that separates championship teams from pretenders. Think about the matchup possibilities. Kuminga defending Giannis Antetokounmpo in a playoff series. Kuminga running the floor alongside Jaylen Brown in transition. Kuminga providing a different look when defenses load up on Boston shooters. The theoretical fit is tantalizing, even if the practical execution would require some adjustment on both sides. The trade mechanics. How Boston could actually pull this off now. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how a deal could actually materialize, because this isn't as simple as swapping players on a video game trade machine. The Celtics have two primary trade chips that make sense in a Kuminga scenario: Anfernee Simons and Sam Hauser. Simons, acquired earlier this season, carries a $27.6 million expiring contract that provides salary-matching flexibility. He's a talented scorer who could theoretically help Golden State maintain offensive firepower, but here's the problem. The Warriors don't really need another guard. They've got Curry, they've got Brandon Podziemski developing nicely, and they've got D'Anthony Melton when healthy. Adding Simons doesn't solve any pressing need for Golden State unless they're planning to flip him elsewhere. That's where the three-team trade scenario becomes essential. Boston would need to find a third partner willing to take on Simons while sending assets to Golden State that actually makes sense for their roster construction. Maybe a team looking for backcourt scoring takes Simons, sends a veteran big man to Golden State, and Boston lands Kuminga, while including Hauser and draft compensation to sweeten the pot. Sam Hauser represents another piece of the puzzle. He's a legitimate floor-spacing threat, shooting 42% from three this season, and he's on a team-friendly contract that makes him attractive to multiple teams. Golden State, desperate for shooting to space the floor around Curry, might value Hauser more than you'd initially think. But would Hauser plus picks be enough to pry Kuminga loose? Probably not without additional salary matching and that crucial third team. The timeline matters here, too. Players who signed new contracts this past summer become trade eligible on January 15th, which opens up the pool of potential trade partners significantly. The February 5th trade deadline is rapidly approaching, which means if Boston is serious about making a move, Brad Stevens needs to be working the phones right now. The risk-reward calculation, championship upside versus chemistry disruption, here's where we need to have an honest conversation about whether this move actually makes sense for Boston beyond the surface-level appeal of adding a young, athletic talent. The Celtics have built something special this season, a cohesive, defensively dominant team that plays with remarkable chemistry and purpose. Introducing a player who's publicly feuded with his coaching staff and shown questionable commitment raises legitimate concerns about disrupting that chemistry. Kuminga's club option for next season adds an interesting wrinkle to the risk assessment. Boston wouldn't be committing long-term money immediately, which provides a built-in escape hatch if the fit doesn't work. They could essentially rent Kuminga for a playoff run, evaluate him in their system, and then decide whether to extend him or let him walk. That's about as low risk as acquiring a player of Kuminga's caliber gets in today's NBA. But the reward side of the equation is equally compelling. Imagine a scenario where Tatum returns from injury and Boston suddenly has three legitimate wing scorers who can all defend multiple positions. That's the kind of versatility that wins championships in the modern NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks can't throw all their defensive attention at Brown if Kuminga is attacking from the weak side. The Philadelphia 76ers can't hide Joel Embiid defensively if Boston can switch everything on the perimeter. The counterargument, of course, is that Boston is already winning at an elite level. Why risk disrupting the formula that's working? Why trade away a proven shooter like Hauser and a productive guard like Simons for a player who might not fit the system? These are legitimate questions that Brad Stevens undoubtedly is wrestling with right now. The broader context. What this move says about Boston's championship window, let's zoom out for a moment and consider what a Kuminga trade would signal about the Celtics' approach to their championship window. Boston has been aggressive in recent years, trading for Kristaps Porzingis, acquiring Jrue Holiday, and building a roster designed to win now, while Tatum and Brown are in their primes. Adding Kuminga would represent a continuation of that aggressive posture, a willingness to take calculated risks in pursuit of banner number 18. But it would also represent something else, an acknowledgement that the Eastern Conference is getting tougher. The Cleveland Cavaliers are legitimate contenders. The New York Knicks have built something sustainable. The Orlando Magic are ascending. Boston can't afford to stand pat and assume their current roster is sufficient to navigate an increasingly competitive playoff gauntlet. Tatum's injury, while not considered long-term serious, has exposed some depth concerns. When your best player goes down, you want to feel confident that the supporting cast can maintain excellence. Right now, Boston's wing depth behind Tatum and Brown is solid but not spectacular. Kuminga would provide a significant talent upgrade that could be the difference between a second-round exit and a finals appearance. There's also the psychological element to consider. Making a bold move at the trade deadline sends a message to your locker room. Management believes in this group and is willing to invest in winning now. It energizes players, creates buzz, and can provide a genuine boost heading into the playoff stretch. Sometimes the act of improving matters as much as the actual improvement itself. The Steve Kerr factor. Can Boston succeed where Golden State failed? One of the most fascinating subplots in this potential trade is whether Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics coaching staff can unlock the version of Kuminga that Steve Kerr couldn't or wouldn't. This isn't about disrespecting Kerr, who's one of the most accomplished coaches of his generation. It's about acknowledging that sometimes a player needs a fresh environment to reach his potential. Mazzulla has shown a willingness to empower young players and trust them in big moments. He's built an offensive system that emphasizes pace, space, and versatility, all things that should theoretically suit Kuminga's skill set better than Golden State's more rigid motion offense. The question is whether Kuminga has the basketball IQ and discipline to thrive in Boston's system, which demands constant communication, switching, and making the right read. The Celtics also have veteran leadership in place that could help Kuminga mature. Jaylen Brown has evolved into one of the league's most complete two-way players. Al Horford remains a steadying presence. Drew Holiday is a championship-tested veteran who understands what it takes to win at the highest level. Surrounding Kuminga with that kind of leadership infrastructure could be exactly what he needs to take the next step. But let's not sugarcoat the challenge. Kuminga would be joining a team with established hierarchies, defined roles, and championship expectations. He wouldn't get the green light to dominate the ball or take questionable shots. He'd need to accept a complementary role while still making an impact. That requires maturity and self-awareness that Kuminga hasn't always demonstrated in Golden State. The financial implications, luxury tax, and long-term planning, we can't discuss this potential trade without addressing the financial realities because the Celtics are already deep into luxury tax territory, and every move has cascading implications for future roster construction. Trading Simon's expiring contract for Kuminga's club option actually provides some short-term financial flexibility, but it also creates a long-term decision point. If Kuminga performs well and Boston wants to retain him beyond next season, they're looking at a significant contract extension for a player who'll be seeking a substantial raise. That would push the Celtics even deeper into the luxury tax and potentially limit their ability to make other moves. Ownership has shown a willingness to spend, but there are limits to every organization's financial tolerance. The flip side is that championship windows are finite and expensive. The Celtics are paying Tatum and Brown max contracts. They're paying Porzingis significant money. They're already committed to being a luxury tax team. At that point, the incremental cost of adding another talented player might be worth it if it increases your championship odds by even a few percentage points. This is where Brad Stevens earns his salary. He needs to balance short-term championship pursuit with long-term roster sustainability. He needs to evaluate whether Kuminga is worth the financial commitment and potential chemistry disruption. And he needs to do it all while the clock ticks toward the February 5th deadline. The verdict: should Boston pull the trigger? So, after examining every angle, every risk, and every potential reward, what's the answer? Should the Celtics be aggressively pursuing Jonathan Kuminga? Here's my take. If Boston can acquire Kuminga without giving up core rotation pieces beyond Simons and Hauser, and if they can structure the deal to maintain financial flexibility, they absolutely should do it. The upside is too significant to ignore. A 22-year-old wing with Kuminga's physical tools and potential doesn't become available often, and the Celtics are in a position to capitalize on Golden State's dysfunction. The key is not overpaying. Don't include multiple first-round picks. Don't gut your depth. But if you can essentially swap Simons, who's been fine but not essential, and Hauser, a valuable shooter but replaceable, for a player with Kuminga ceiling, that's a risk worth taking for a team with championship aspirations. The Tatum injury makes this move even more logical. Boston needs insurance against further injury concerns, and Kuminga provides exactly that kind of versatile athletic depth. Even when Tatum returns, having 3 legitimate wing threats makes the Celtics' offense nearly impossible to defend, and their defense capable of switching everything. But Stevens needs to do his homework. He needs to talk to people in Golden State's organization who can provide honest assessments of Kuminga's character, work ethic, and coachability. He needs to feel confident that Kuminga won't be a locker room problem or a coaching headache. And he needs to structure the deal in a way that provides multiple exit ramps if things don't work out. The NBA is a league of calculated risks. The teams that win championships are the ones willing to be aggressive when opportunities present themselves. Right now, Jonathan Kuminga represents one of those opportunities. The Celtics would be foolish not to at least explore whether they can turn Golden State's problem into their championship solution. So, what do you think? Is Kuminga the missing piece that puts Boston over the top? Or would trading for him be an unnecessary risk that could disrupt the chemistry that's already working? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear whether your team make the trade or team stand pat. And if you found this breakdown valuable, smash that like button and let's keep this conversation going. The trade deadline is approaching fast and things are about to get very interesting in Boston.